in a huge organization such as Disney, and we always say, leadership, a culture of leadership begins at the top and trickles down, but we can lead from anywhere. How do the cast members, Dan, how do they lead from where they are? I know you encourage that.
Sure. Well, I think to your point, leadership, when you're building a culture, and Disney has a long history of culture. Walt Disney originally really understood that he wanted to create this incredible environment for people to create great memories in and be in a place where families could spend time together. And the company hasn't lost that since Disneyland opened in 1955. But over time, I've learned that when you get to a senior executive level in any company, in my opinion, half your job is being proactive and engaging and helping plan the future, and half your job is trying to stay out of the way. I think as you come up through a company, you get used to being involved in everything. And if you really want to build a culture where people take initiative and are empowered, you have to learn to step aside and let them be who they are and let them go down paths and sometimes make mistakes. And that's probably where we trip up the most as executives, because we think we need to be involved in everything and we sort of overvalue ourselves. And a lot of times when you have the right culture, the best thing you can do is do nothing. And that's the hardest thing to do, I think, for people who are very driven.
So, I know that with Disney that you all work so diligently on the culture, and your dad, Lee, who he put together the original Disney leadership program, as I recall, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was always a focus, and you did empower people. But what about the question? I'm often asked this, and it's from people who are employees, let's say, where it's a negative culture. And they really don't know what to do. They want to stay with that company. There are some good aspects of the company, but the culture maybe is toxic, or if it's not that, it's just not as positive as it could be. Where do they begin to make a difference if they can?
Sure. Well, I think that it's probably the same expression we use for recycling is think globally and act locally. And at the end of the day, one person in a huge organization is never going to change the culture by themselves. And so what I found myself doing a lot was making sure I was filtering out the parts of the Disney culture that maybe weren't the best for my cast members, and I was trying to grow everything else. So as I tell people, influence the people that are within your span of control, and everything else is going to be what it is. And you have to decide whether, on balance, the company you're working for has a culture that you can accept. And there's good days and bad days. And I've had many days at Disney where I drove home thinking, I do not like working here. But I had more good days where I drove home thinking I did some great things today and I was able to create some great experiences. And on balance, if you have more better days and bad days, stay with the company. But there are going to be times when you feel like, okay, it is so maybe the opposite of what your values are and your expectations are, that you have to make a change and change your own environment. And that's an individual decision. But you're not always going to be able to save the world. And you have to decide when it's time to quit strategically, I'd call it.
Okay, and that's a great point. Now, I want to ask you about yourself and the premise for you becoming a great leader and so big in terms of culture. First, a comment from Dom Cassone, who writes, "I love to hear about Disney ever since Dan Kennedy made me aware of what they do and how they do it." And it's really funny because Dom, I was at a Dan Kennedy event where Dan talked about Mike Vance, who was a friend of his, who was one of the people, I think, originally at Disneyland. And Dan, this is probably before you were born, I would imagine, and who was such a great leader in that regard. So yeah, Dan, and I don't know if you know Dan Kennedy, Dan, that he is a great marketing expert. I mean, really one of the prime marketing people anywhere, and he is a huge fan of Disney. And it's so funny because when people talk about marketing, Disney is just always brought up. You provide that kind of customer experience, which we know begins with the experience with your team members, with your cast members. And so go ahead.
No, I think you're right. I think when you think about why Disney is great at marketing, I think there's extreme clarity in what we do. Our tagline is, "We make dreams come true." So there's some pretty big promises of what we tell people we're going to do, and we don't back away from that. And so the expectations are high, and there's a lot of pressure to perform and make sure we deliver on that. But once again, the culture has built a place where every cast member understands their purpose. Everyone's role is different. Some people make French fries. Some people sweep the ground. Some people are vice presidents. Some people are servers in restaurants. We have like so many different roles, but everyone's purpose is the same. And everyone understands, if we're doing our job correctly, that we're all there to make sure that every single guest has the best vacation they ever had. And it's up to our cast to deliver that. And so once you set that purpose, it's easy to sort of brush aside rules and guidelines and all the other stuff that gets in the way of making decisions to empower the cast to make those decisions. And so I think clarity is a pretty important thing.
Jeff West writes, great comment. If the culture is great, sometimes the best strategy is to do nothing. I love that.